Hello and welcome to the show. This is a fun one because we're going to get really deep, really deep into that feeling of not feeling good enough. But I feel like this gets talked about in such a surface level way. Like, oh, well, of course you're enough. Like we're supposed to just go from not feeling enough to feeling worthy. It's always this worthiness conversation. And I could guarantee that you know you're worthy, that you're worthy of love, that you're worthy of success, that you are worthy of having your desires, right? When you hear me say that, can you feel that in your body? Can you really sink into worthiness? I don't think that worthiness and not feeling good enough are the same thing. So I want to dive into this topic today, and especially from the lens of being a highly sensitive woman and why we tend to feel this way, especially when we are building a business and or going after our dreams. So if you're new to the podcast, hi, I'm Jaya Rose. I am your host. I am also an embodiment coach and business mentor specifically for highly sensitive women. And I have an amazing program launching in 2020, and I have not dropped all the details yet. So maybe I'll wait, but it is specifically around embodying your sensitivities, really owning your sensitivities as your superpowers and identifying what those superpowers are so you can then build a business in alignment with you. And I'm calling this the highly sensitive business model. And that's where this conversation came from for me as I've been creating this content and really going, hey, what has it taken? What has it taken for me to get out of my own way and show up consistently online in a noisy space? Let's be real, in a crowded space where people are saying a lot of the same things. This is where that feeling of not feeling good enough can come up huge as we start to claim that we have these dreams to be a leader and to show up in our magic. And then we go to put them out into the world and this resistance comes up and we're like, wait a minute, what's going on? And so I just want to break down for you today why I believe this happens for us and how we can transmute this energy. Because truly it is the energy around it. So first things first, let's just talk about energy. As you start to have this feeling of I'm not good enough and you feel triggered, it goes from this subconscious thought that's just living below the surface because you're not always thinking it, right? So it's underneath the surface. And then it comes up to the conscious awareness. But there's a little gap in between your actual awareness. So it could come to the conscious mind going, I'm not good enough. Oh, this is that trigger for me. Oh my gosh. What if I could never do this? What if that person is better than me? What if because they're doing it, that means I can't do it? Right. And it starts to go in this loop of thoughts. So let's just identify that that's where it begins. Now that's consciously happening as soon as you recognize that it's happening. Rather, as soon as like you start feeling a lot of feelings around it. Now, this is where the energy piece comes in because as soon as your feelings start being triggered and you start reacting to those thoughts and you feel like you're not good enough and you feel like you're less than and you feel triggered, this is where that awareness piece really is the most important thing. And if you've done any work with me, you know that I talk about this. So that piece where you go, oh, that's not in the unconscious mind anymore. That's happening right now in real time. Yet I don't know how it's relevant. Like, how is any of this shit relevant to what I was doing, which was thinking about making a post online or thinking about saying yes to an opportunity or pitching myself for an opportunity? How is any of this shit relevant to that? This is the golden moment when we have the awareness. We have the opportunity to transmute the energy, because otherwise what happens is we just get a bunch of feelings stacked on top of one another. We're like, oh, I'm not feeling good enough. Why am I not feeling good enough? Oh my gosh, I shouldn't not be feeling good enough. And we start judging and it becomes this whole loop. So I just want to clarify that that's the process that we go through. Does this make sense to you? You're like, oh yeah, that happens. Now, the thing that I find really helpful about identifying your high sensitivity and understanding that as a highly sensitive woman, you are different. And that as you're growing up, maybe this wasn't identified for you. I know that it was not identified for me. I didn't identify as a highly sensitive woman until I was in my 30s. And I really look back and think that if I would have understood what that meant and what it specifically meant for me in my life and how I show up and how I process, it would have been really helpful. So because it wasn't identified, then I was left, I almost want to say, like thrown to the wolves. Like you're in an environment where, let's just be clear, 20% of the population has the highly sensitive trait. That means that 80% does not. So I was talking to my 6-year-old last night because she's highly sensitive, and I talked to her about her sensitivity, and I talked to her about what it means for her. And I was saying to her, you know, there's 20 kids in your class, which means that there's probably around 4. I think there's probably between 3 and 5 kids in her class that are highly sensitive. When you really think about it that way, you think of a group of kids, 20 kids, and only 3, 4 of them being highly sensitive. It is so the minority. And to really look at your life and remember back to when you were being heavily influenced by what other people think of you and really being formed in a lot of ways by that environment. When you are a minority, you know, and this is like across the board, right? Like we could go deep into being a minority. Now, I can only speak on what I know to be true about it because I have white privilege. I'm a white woman. I was a white little girl. Therefore, I have no idea what it's like to be a minority in terms of race or in terms of sexual preference or in terms of sexuality, period, like gender identification. This goes so deep. So I just want to point that out. But specifically just for the highly sensitive piece, it is a minority of its own because you have a trait within you that creates personality, preferences, and characteristics that are different than other people. You can't act like that's not true. And so when we grow up this way, yet it's not identifiable that you are different, nobody can see from the outside that you're different, it's really tricky to not end up feeling like you're not good enough. Because naturally we want to be like everybody else. And if you have this messaging coming in to your life saying, oh, well, why are you crying about that? And not to say that all sensitivity is about crying, because this is not even really about the typical sensitivity. I do in air quotes, and I'll get into that in a moment. But there is an essence of it that is around feelings and is around empathy. We tend to be more empathetic and we tend to notice how other people feel. There have been studies done that show when, say, you take a group of highly sensitive people and they're looking at a screen where it has a face on it and it shows a different emotion on the face. There is a part of the brain, the empathic part of the brain, and I don't know the technical term for it, that lights up for a highly sensitive that shows, I recognize that as a feeling and I see it and I have it in myself, right? Empathy. Where somebody who's not highly sensitive, it's not to say that they couldn't be empathic, because I do believe you can learn it, but it's not a natural trait the same way it is for a highly sensitive, necessarily. Isn't that fascinating? And so you just think about, okay, a 6-year-old in first grade and somebody else falls down and gets hurt, and that kid literally feels the pain of the other person emotionally for them. And yet that's not understood. Think about how much messaging there is for like, just stop. What are you doing? Who cares? They're the one that got hurt. So many examples we could come up with where you were actually probably told to stop it. To stop doing what? To stop being who you are. To stop being who you are. You're being judged. You're a circle being put into a box. And ultimately, the only messaging that's really even possible to come from that is that you're not good enough. It's so fucking crazy to me how embedded this is for us. And yet we just get thrown, like I keep getting this sense of like thrown into the wolves. Here you are. And then we grow up, and then naturally, as a highly sensitive person, you are a leader. And this is for a couple reasons, but one is because you've had to lead yourself. You've had to come up with your own way. There has been no option but to pave your own way. Because if you try to do it like someone else, it's never worked for you, right? So that's leadership. Leadership is going first. Leadership is paving a new way. It's being brave enough to do it in a way that works for you. And so it's built in. Like being highly sensitive and being a leader they're really parallel. They really are. Also, the part of our brain that processes information coming in. So, okay, this is about to happen. And ultimately, it's the choice-making part of our brain. There's two different parts that can get lit up. One that says take risk and the other that says be careful. And one of the main components of the highly sensitive trait is that we tend to lean more heavily towards the part of the brain when new information comes and we're making a decision to the part that says be careful. And that makes us take longer to make a decision sometimes, and or really take time to it doesn't have to take you a lot of time, I'm trying to say, but your processing system will work through, like, am I going to get hurt? How are other people going to feel? Well, what's it going to mean for everybody as a whole? You have a way that you actually process information differently than if you were accessing the part of your brain that says, let's just take risk. Then what happens is you think about it later, right? Okay, take the risk, do the thing, jump off the cliff, whatever it looks like in your actual life. You look back later and you learn from hindsight, where the highly sensitive trait actually gives you this gift of saying, let me think through how I'm going to feel. Let me think through how you're going to feel. Let me process this through on a deeper level. And doesn't this make sense for you in your life? Now, this is why it's so important for us to be in leadership and to be life coaches, to be business coaches, spiritual coaches, fitness coaches, be people who are in a position to really help other people, because it comes naturally to us to really feel into what does it mean as a whole? Okay, if you're going to make that decision for your life, what does it mean as a whole? And then we can process it through our feelings in a way more profound way. And this is the superpower. Now, this is not taught to us. Nobody taught me this, like I said, till I'm in my 30s, which is so crazy to me because I spent my whole childhood, teenagehood, and early adult life going through life knowing, number one, that I was different than other people. Knowing, number two, that I had to honor it because otherwise I got hives, I got sick, I felt unhappy, I felt off. I couldn't even function if I didn't actually follow my own intuition and my own cues, like my own inner guidance. And the third part of this is that is frowned upon. This is like, I think we're in a time and space now where this is becoming more honored. Like, hello, She Rise podcast. I am going to empower you in this. I am not even going to have relationships with people who don't honor this. right? So this is amazing, but we have to pay homage to where we came from and those truths that were really a part of who we were and how we identified ourselves as highly sensitive people and what that meant, the judgment around it. And you can see very clearly that all of this equals not feeling good enough. Every single part of this puzzle, when you put it together, you go, okay, no wonder you feel on a deep level like you're not good enough. So you feel worthy because you can work on these things like self-love and worthiness. I really feel like is one of the easiest things to tap into because it's inherent. Like, what are you not worthy of? It's almost just stupid. Okay. It's just dumb. We are worthy. It's so silly to think any other way. I do believe there are people who have to undo not feeling worthy if they got specific messaging around like, you are not good enough. You are not worthy. I know there is abuse that happens, and this is a different conversation. So I just want to say that if you've worked through that or you didn't experience it, like I'm very blessed to not have experienced that, the worthiness piece is easy to own because you say, oh, well, there's other people doing this. There's other women who look like me. There's other women who don't look like me. There's people who are rising there. Like there's evidence, right? That your dreams are possible. So of course you're worthy of having them, but do you feel you're good enough? Do you feel like you have to change who you are inherently and or the sensitivity that you have is in some way a hindrance? Because when we feel like it's a hindrance and we haven't fully owned it in our life and really ultimately learn how to take care of ourselves, because that's the key, then we really are in a position to not be good enough because we may not have the hustle or the stamina or the emotional resilience in some ways, like the really actually not caring what people think kind of thing. That might not come natural. Like if you're anything like me, you might really need to work on it. And the sensitivity that you have is such a beautiful place to start because that's where you started receiving the messaging in the first place that you weren't good enough. Do you see what I'm saying? Like go to the source where you started to discover who you were and then it got shut down because people around you didn't understand it. And of course, you didn't understand it. So guess what the key is? The transmuting of this old conditioning is really about understanding because that's where the problem started. The problem started when you didn't understand it and people around you didn't understand it. So the key to transmute it is to deeply understand it, to make an oath, to create habit, to be devoted to really understanding your sensitivity and to releasing the judgment. Because then when the old triggers come through and you do bigger, scarier things, and it's the perfect opportunity to reinforce, oh, you're not good enough, oh, you're too different. It's not that those thoughts won't come. This has been my experience. The thoughts still come. I still wonder all the time if I'm good enough in some ways. But what I do find is that the emotional response has changed because the conversation has changed with myself. And I now have evidence that when I take really good care of myself, that when I honor my sensitivity, that when I use my intuition like it truly is my superpower, that such amazing things happen in my life. So I can look at the evidence that I'm not good enough or that I'm too different in some way, or I can use the evidence that, but look what happens when I follow the breadcrumbs and I really go all in. And it slowly unwinds. This is not an immediate fix, but it is to say, to start, and if you've already started, that's awesome, to continue to deepen your relationship with yourself and your own sensitivities is the way to transmute this old story that was never you in the first place, that you're not good enough. Because when we do this work, we are able to show up more powerfully in the natural abilities that the high sensitivities give us, in the ability to lead, in the ability to counsel others, to be the person who thinks more deeply, who feels more deeply, who has an inherent process of tapping into the whole instead of just one segment of things, which is a huge part of how we've gotten into a lot of the problems we have in our society because of so much separateness. We have a natural ability to feel the oneness that is a law of the universe because of our sensitivity. How freaking powerful and amazing is that? So over the holidays, whether you're listening to this the week of Thanksgiving when I'm recording it or whenever it is, just know that this is the return home. That the return home to who you've always been and who you truly are is where the healing lives and the ability to transmute the old story that you're not good enough. I hope this touched you. Please send me a message on Instagram. I started a new Instagram account called She Rise Podcast. And I keep telling you guys to go to Instagram. Like I'm always like, go to the Jaya Rose. And now I'm so excited to tell you that I created a specific Instagram page, and I'm going to be putting up a little clip from every episode. You can go directly to the podcast from there. You can come and comment on the actual post of the clip that I put up for each episode. Tell me if you got something from this. I can communicate with you. We can chat. You can send me a direct message. Excuse me. I'm so excited about this. So just go over to She Rise Podcast and I'll put the link below as well. But on Instagram, you can just search it and make sure to like that. We are going to go into a Jammin' with Jaya segment now. So stick around because I'm going to check out our live audience here. Hey, Miss Lisa, would you like to hop on with me? I'm going to allow you to talk. All right, sister, you there?
Hello, I am here.
Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Great. How are you doing, Miss Jaya?
Good. How was that for
Good.
you?
It was really good.
Mm.
I related to a lot of it, of course, as always. I was trying to listen to you first to come up with like a coaching question that I could have answered.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't really come up with anything because every time I listen to you, as I'm thinking about something to ask, like either you answer it or I find myself being able to answer it for me.
Dang, that's amazing.
You.
That's so good.
That's the benefit of being highly sensitive.
Yes, it is. Yeah, the deep process. So good.
Yeah.
Well, so tell me a little bit about what's going on for you, because I'm sure we can find something. Like tell me about what your current edge is.
So I am still doing my personal concierge business.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way trying to incorporate my newly learned Reiki into that.
Yeah.
As well as beginning to take on one-on-one Reiki clients. And with my Reiki clients, what I'm planning to do with them is kind of like a coaching. So after I have our session, I send them a document, a PDF of what came through, what we each went over with each other, and then how they can work through that.
Yeah.
And begin to see results, and we'll have like a follow-up afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't started that because this month of November, I kind of was getting the hint from the universe that I needed to kind of just slow down and kind of rest a little bit this month in between transitioning services, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of now hesitating how to begin offering those services and begin to explain it in a way that people know they can really benefit from it.
Yeah. So to find the benefit in the Reiki or Reiki slash coaching, is that what it is?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will tell you that it's like the elusive. It's almost like I think of a mountain lion. And I don't know why, but I love mountain lions. And I lived in the mountains where they lived for like 3 years and I never saw one. I saw their poop one time. I wanted to see a mountain lion. We know they're there, right? Like,
Hmm.
so that I know it's there. I saw its poop. I also have heard many tales. Okay. So there's mountain lions in these mountains, yet I never saw one. So my point is that I feel like this is transformation. Like transformation is a mountain lion.
Mm.
And it's almost like we need people to experience it. Like if you go into the woods and you're like, yeah, I know there's mountain lion here. You just feel it. You're like, this is their home. Right.
Right.
So when you bring someone into your experience, it's almost like, let me not talk about this because let me tell you a million ways that you could find a mountain lion and you never find one. That's ridiculous,
Right.
right? I'm going to make this all make
Absolutely.
sense. Maybe it
I'm
is.
following you.
Okay. Um, it's not that we don't talk about it because we do. I do think that sometimes something that's really helpful in the transformation space is to focus less on what the results are, because this is what you learn in regular marketing, right? You're like, I have to have the results. What is their pain point? Yada, yada. Now,
Right.
great. That's fine. If you can identify that easily, but I find in transformation work, it isn't so easily identifiable.
Hmm.
One thing I do think is easier is actually identifying the person. So I don't know if you've heard me talk about this. So who is the person who you think would benefit from your work the most?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Um, Someone who wants to begin their own transformation and like,
Mhm.
my message. I am for people really not only speaking their truth, but beginning to live the truth of who they are at their core, kind of how you teach us and
Yep.
embody.
Yep.
And really just unconforming everything that they have learned
Yeah. Okay. So
to
what do
be
they
that's
need
not
to
them.
undo? What is it that they need to undo?
I would say they need to undo, I'm trying to figure out the words, how to say this. Essentially learned behaviors that don't really,
Mhm.
that aren't them, that just aren't them and
Yeah.
are hiding and masking who they really are.
Mhm. And is your coaching specifically around that undoing process?
It's not so, well, yeah, now that we say it like that, not so much undoing, but rather doing
Mhm. Okay.
things that they haven't been doing that allow them to be themselves.
Yeah. Okay, let me give you an kind of like an example of how I would do it for me and my audience, and then let's see if we can translate it into you. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So I I would say that one of the things that I do, and you have been my client, so this is great. Like you can attest to this or or
Okay.
not, okay? Is to help. So if I were just to say to help ambitious, highly sensitive women come home to the truth of who they really are.
Okay.
Would you say that that's true?
Absolutely.
Okay. I would too. But I also feel like it's like a mountain lion. It's like, so, but where is it? It's
Right.
so elusive. And so then I could say, okay, well, but what is one of the things, and this podcast is an awesome example. I know that one of the core things that happens for highly sensitive people is this feeling of not being good enough because we're so different and we hardly ever embrace that we're different.
Hmm.
Right. So that's kind of like the actual problem. Now, the solution is to come home to who you truly are. So
Yes.
it's kind of funny because in marketing, you would say, well, give them the result. They want the thing. They want to come home to who they truly are. But do they? Or do they want to do they want to end that game of feeling like they're not good enough all the time? I think so.
Right. Yeah.
Like if I were to be like, let's have a session. I'm going to help you get out of overwhelm, start taking action right away on your intuitive hits, and to release that old feeling that you're not good enough.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh, I'd like to
That
do
makes
that.
sense.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that there's benefit in saying those things, like that is what they're going to do by embracing the new way. And like you're helping them move through energy through Reiki and then talking through the coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
I think it's really for you about identifying, and see, this is the thing, when you're newly working with people, you might not have these answers quite yet. You might not know
Right.
exactly who it is and where they are in their path, but I would say that that's the goal. Like to look towards that. And the way you do that is you work with lots of different people.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Like you got to practice the work and then see what feels best to you and who it feels best to talk to.
Okay.
So gathering the evidence, right? So the gathering the
Mm-hmm.
evidence phase is like giving away free sessions or charging half price for them, or just like getting a bunch of sessions under your belt.
Of course. Yeah. To gain that experience. And
Yeah. It's a really
yeah.
cool way. I know I did suggest that to you when you were in Embody.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things. But I feel like even 30 sessions, like I don't think that
Right.
you have to get paid yet. And I think that that's a cool way to transition your business from the concierge business to the healing business, is to just start doing it.
Yeah. That
And
makes sense. And that feels right too. Or like I could see how that will feel right.
mm-hmm. And then
Because
not
it is a
worry about it.
gift and yeah, exactly.
And it will come, like the clarity will come through the action.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so you don't need to market it. In other words, you got to just talk to people and reach out to people and say, hey, I have this, session for you. And then if they want to buy more from you, then awesome, sell them.
Right.
It's a cool way to build a business without having to, put a bunch of money into marketing or hire a business coach for right now.
Right. Okay. That helps for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you just talk about it to the best of your ability wherever you are now. And then you'll get more clarity and it will shift and it will change.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that
That's
helpful?
better. Yes, it absolutely is.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. And you're such an awesome example because you did Embody and now you're an Embody alumni in the program again. And I haven't really dropped anything. Oh my God, I'm not going to do it now. Maybe I am. Maybe I am. Well, one of the things that I'm really feeling into is that, and I felt this instinct from the beginning when I created Embody, was like, this is kind of more like a life coaching program. Like, I feel like you
Mm-hmm.
could become a life coach out of this program.
I
And
see.
you know what I mean? Because I
Yeah.
feel like that's what happened for you, is you're like, oh, my power, my leadership. Now, oh,
Yes.
and I can teach this stuff because now I know I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm thinking about doing is actually creating an Embody coaching certification and having that be part of the experience, where you go through Embody and then you go through the coaching certification and then you go through how to create your own programs and launch them into the world and share them and all of the good stuff.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like it. And I can see that for other women that have been in Embody as well.
Yeah. It's like,
In their own way. It's like what you teach in creating a new paradigm of leadership, essentially, is all it is.
yeah. Yes, it is, exactly. But we need to start by owning the sensitivity, which is really what Embody
Mm-hmm.
helps you do. And like coming
Yes.
into that power and having the practices to come back to.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah, no, it's, and, not to make this session about me, because I'm like, well, actually, I have a question for you, but I did think of you when I mean, I can just say whatever. I don't know who I'm hiding things from, but I'm going to, Embody is not going to be ran like it was anymore.
Okay.
It's going to become She Rise School.
Ooh, I love that.
And it's going to be Embody's not going away. That will be the first 3 months of the program.
Oh.
And then it will go into, I'm playing with this like certification, like maybe it could be like choose your own adventure. Some people already have their own style and their own coaching, and they might not want to do that, but I can 100% teach you how to become a coach. Like I just gave you some advice right then on it. Right.
Yes.
So that portion, and then creating your own Embody program kind of a thing, your own signature program, and then the tools and skills to be able to launch it into the world and use social media and all of that.
Yes, that's cool. Because I think the one thing that I struggle with most, and it's probably just coming back to that drawing board and figuring out who I'm talking to and not putting on a platform what I'm offering.
Yeah.
I am just not crazy about posting on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
that definitely helps.
Why is that?
I don't know. Maybe it is a bit of hiding in a way.
Yeah. Okay. Do you feel like you need to be somewhere else or someone else to be able to do it?
I do feel in a way like I need to be someone else in order to do it, because I just don't like having multiple accounts and like having to keep track of them and
Yeah.
switching and just really splitting them up.
Yep.
To coordinate with each profile,
Right.
with each account. And I just find it easier to keep one account, but it's like chaos if you have a whole variety of audience and not just that one targeted audience.
Right. Well, I do think that there's like the pros and cons of using social media. So I've done like 3 different businesses on social media in the past 4 years, which is crazy making. And not like how it's why I could put a program together in a 6 to 9 month program and teach you how to do it so that you don't have to do what I did in 4 years. Right. Of course, it's always like a shortcut. So I would just say that if you do I do think it's important to build an online presence because that's the direction we're going. And we limit ourselves. But I also think that the online space is not for everybody. And if you have a thriving in-person network, then like 100% leverage that.
Yeah.
And then decide later. And then in terms of the accounts, I would always recommend just starting with one. So for example, when I first started, I just did my personal page and I built, to over 6 figures in 10 months through that. I did have a Facebook group too. So Facebook group and my personal page. And that didn't feel overwhelming to me. I didn't do Instagram. Like that's why I don't really have a huge following on Instagram because I hadn't ever like only done Instagram.
Right.
I think simple is the best, but I also do think there's a lot of power in what it takes to create content. Like what it brings out of you to create content, and just that alone, you know what I mean? Like this podcast, like what this like makes me rise. Like I have to show up and do this. I choose to show up, but then I have to.
Right.
Right. So there is that where I feel like you have a voice, you have leadership, at some point I would definitely see you like doing videos and sharing your message.
Yeah.
But I think you're still clarifying your message.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I feel like you said that if you thrive with in-person connection, like do
Yeah.
that. And I feel like I do connect better
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one and in person. And so I
Yes.
think my social media, I would rather people just see me for all of that I am and be able to connect that way and
Yeah.
then build through the one-on-one connections.
Yep. I think it's awesome. And I really think, especially for a highly sensitive woman, it's important to focus on one thing because we
Mm-hmm.
do get overwhelmed easily. And that overwhelm is really only because we process more deeply. And so, what that
Yeah.
means, it's just true. So, if I was like, okay, you're going to do a 30-day Facebook Live challenge. You're going to have a different experience doing that than somebody who isn't highly sensitive because you're going to literally process your own process. You're going to be like, wow, what did it take me to, am I right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're going to be like, what did it take me to come up with that content? Oh wow, yeah, I was inspired about that. Oh, I wonder why I was
Mm-hmm.
inspired about that. That's so interesting. And then you're in a fucking rabbit hole, which is awesome. Like it's so good.
Right. Totally bittersweet.
It's
Yeah, because then you're like,
totally,
oh, well, where am I going with my next one?
yeah. And then you're like,
Well, why?
wow, but okay, if I was inspired last time by this, I wonder if I, right? And everything is so curious all the time.
Yes.
It's awesome. It's so good. You're going to, anything you do has more depth because of that. But also it's married with overwhelm because
Exactly.
and then you're like, but someone else is doing 100 days of Facebook Live and they have a Facebook group and they're running a live challenge and all this shit, right? And this is where this conversation we're having about good enough. We cannot
Mm-hmm.
compare. You cannot compare yourself to someone else. You got to remember that you're processing more deeply than anyone else is, or most people are.
Yeah,
So
I know that for a fact.
keep it stupid simple.
Okay. I'm gonna
Keep
write
it
that.
stupid
Keep it simple.
simple. We of course need to stretch, like we got to do stuff that's uncomfortable sometimes, but I think
Mm-hmm.
for you it's really about knowing following the knowing. Like you're like, no, I actually really feel like this is it now. And just doing that. And then you'll get another intuitive hit and then you can follow that.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. One thing at a time.
What really? Yeah. And I think the best reason to use social media is because you can't not share your message.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you're not feeling that right now, then I say don't share the message.
Yeah.
Because I do that too. God, this is my advice for myself. I do the same thing. It's like I have all this stuff coming through around this highly sensitive business model and She Rise and the new She Rise school. And so then I don't feel like I need to share my message like crazy because I'm a little bit more in the internal process of like, what is that going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
Then once it's complete, or ready, like gestated, then it's like, boom,
Right.
now I don't know. I'm still allowing myself to really be in those processes and not judge that I have to be on social media all the time.
Yeah,
I think it's a real thing.
it is. It totally is.
So
And that's
yeah, I
very
would say
helpful.
take that pressure off, build those relationships, do your sessions. This is about you stepping into your healing gifts. This is
Absolutely.
big thing. Like you're going to look back on this in 5-10 years and remember how you did it. And remember, like, this is your story right now unfolding.
It is. Thank you.
This is huge. It's big.
It is. And like you said, I kind of resonated with you saying that you didn't figure out that you were highly sensitive until your 30s. And I'm like, and I'm not even 30 yet. And I'm glad that I'm figuring this out about myself.
Yep.
But I do still have some time to marinate and gather everything.
Yeah.
So
100%. And that process for you is your superpower.
mm-hmm.
It is.
Patience for sure.
And it feels uncomfortable to allow it because it so was not taught to us.
Exactly.
It's the innate process that you have that literally you were born that way. Of course, it's for a reason.
Right. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, so good. I love you so
Yeah.
much.
I love you too. Thank you for everything that you do. You're amazing.
Oh, I received that, and same to you. And I will reach out to you separately about She Rise School.
All right. I love it.
Okay, babe. I'll
Good
talk to
luck.
you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Oh my gosh, isn't she incredible? That was so good. And Lisa, just if you're still listening, Lisa sends me messages. Like Lisa is like my cheerleading squad. This is the other thing about highly sensitive people is that they intuit other people's needs and they're so giving. Like when we're not overwhelmed and burnt out and thinking we're not good enough, we are so fucking magnetic and giving. And there are times that I'm doing something new because listen, I got my own stuff. I don't talk about any of this stuff because it's not something I've been through. This is all my own process too. And so as I'm doing a new thing and creating a longer program, I've never done a 6-month program that it's going to be either 6 months or 9 months. I've never done either one of those things. I 100% can, but I have my own resistance and fear around it. And so as I'm creating and I'll look on my social media and there'll be the nicest message from Lisa. And she's like, thank you so much for your leadership. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you for seeing me. Because I think this is the core of this conversation around transmuting the old feeling not good enough belief. It's that we really just come home, like we said, come home to yourselves, but also just be in that knowing that it's perfectly how it is. And that when other people are showing up, telling you exactly what you need to hear, like you've got to stop and listen to that and use that as new evidence and really, really own it. So anyway, I hope that this topic touched you guys. Let me know if you guys enjoyed the Jammin' with Jaya segment. You can let me know on the She Rise podcast Instagram page. Come on over. This clip will be up the day it goes out on Wednesday. I think it's the 27th. So much love to you guys. Keep going, keep doing your thing, and just unraveling all of this old nonsense so that you can truly be in the new and in the true of who you are meant to be. And if you're curious about She Rise School, pop on over and send me a message. I think you got a little taste of what it's going to be. I will talk about it more in the next coming weeks. We are going to be getting started around the new year. So much love to you. And remember, when you move, everything moves.